Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Aquarian Mind Podcast. Today's podcast, episode number 237. I'm your host, Jamel Crothers. You guys know what time it is. It's Book Insight Friday. And today I'm delving into characters that relate to me. Now, what I mean by that are the characters that I have written about in all of the books that I've, published so far. So I'm going to delve into it today. 5 characters. You ready? Okay, cool. Now, believe it or not, there are a few characters that do relate to me. Their personalities, how they think, how they carry themselves. I incorporate my personality into theirs. Now, if you know me well and you really pay attention, then you'll catch on to the characters that relate to me. So, let's get started. First character, and I've said it at great length in so many podcasts, Robert. And he's the main character in the Struggles and Growth of a Man series. That is the first book that I ever wrote and published on February 28th, 2016. So yes, that was over 7 years ago when I published my first book. And that book went from 1 book to a 5-book series. And it was my first book series and the start of my writing journey. And Robert was a character that, I hold dear to my heart. When I wrote the first book, I didn't, realize he was going to be a huge component to my writing journey. And he was someone I just knew I wanted to develop and speak on behalf of young men in today's world. A man who is trying to figure out life. And it's what a lot of men deal with on a daily basis. Trying to maneuver through the trenches along with the ups and downs of life and what's going on in the world. Trying to fit in, understand ourselves, our journey, mistakes we make, regrets, uncertainties in our minds, confidence, all of it. A lot of Robert's thinking and ideologies relate to me, so it was fitting that my biggest and favorite character to write was Robert, and I'm very thankful that I was able to. Derek, the main character in my standalone book, The World in Ruins. Now, writing a standalone book of this magnitude took a lot to do, and it was a risk. But when you see the world from a certain perspective that a lot of people don't, I had to write a character that cared and was empathetic to what's going on around him. And Derek is basically a younger version of me. He's wise beyond his years, which is something that I am. An old soul, another part of who I am. And he's concerned about where the world is going. And that's something I think about constantly and daily. It makes more sense why I wrote a book like this. And unfortunately, a lot of what I wrote in that book has happened. And sometimes I don't realize how much I can see into the future and what could potentially happen. But I did spend a lot of time researching, observing, being engaged with people, and watching truther pages in order for me to write a story of this magnitude and pretty much what the world could be in the near future. So Derek was someone that I needed to write a younger version of me. And in a way, I wish I was Derek at 18 rather than me at 40. To put it in a nutshell. Then the next character, Mark. He is in the Kids with Gun series, which focuses on gun control. That is a 5-book series. Now, the investigative, wanting to know what's going on aspect of Mark, that defines me in so many ways. And I'm someone who looks into things, questions the status quo and what's really going on around us in the world. Now, when a major school shooting happens and Mark gets pulled off the case, he launches an investigation of his own into what's really going on. And that's something I would do, and it's why I incorporated that into Mark. Because I want people to know there's so much that goes on behind the scenes of catastrophic events that don't get reported and told to us. And as the series progressed, I knew Mark was becoming more and more like me. I loved writing it that way, and when I reflect back on it now, it feels good to let you guys know into how I wrote certain characters that are pretty much like me. And I can say that Mark's strong personality came out toward the end of the book series, something that comes out of me from time to time. And it's always a challenge to write characters that you can relate to, so I know Mark was worth writing about. And I know in my mind that Mark is someone that I will most likely write in another book series in the future. I can't say in the near future right now as I'm recording this, but there's a good chance that he will be in another book series. The next character, Dwight. He is in A Man's Plight Part 1. Man's Plight is a 6-book series that focuses on men's social issues affecting us in the world today. But each book in A Man's Plight will have a different character that will speak on the social issues that are affecting us today. So Dwight was in A Man's Plight Part 1. And to start the series, I had to make it a focus on the portrayals of men in society. And Dwight is someone who thinks like me and how men aren't put in the best light a lot of times in the media, especially when male celebrities are wearing dresses on television for a laugh and doing anything for fame and $1. And Hollyweird is a strange place behind the scenes and things that go on that don't get told to us. It's all too common for comedians to do things beyond their morals to make $1 and be rich. And Dwight is someone who is trying to change the landscape of that by writing quality content and things that are fulfilling to a person's mind. And Dwight sees it right in front of his face, and he doesn't like it. And as a black man in America, I see a lot of things that concern me. And the media paints us to be a certain way, and while there have been improvements over time, the content is all replicated and nothing is new and fresh. And it's why I wrote this story. It was necessary to write Dwight from a perspective of what a lot of men are thinking, but also things that I think about daily. The last character, Evan. Now he's in A Man's Plight Part 4 out of the 6 books in the series that I mentioned before. And the financial burdens and stresses of what society puts on men is astronomical. It's what I went through for the majority of my work life after college, having to figure it out and get it together. It would be over a decade before I landed a job where I make good money and can live comfortably. And Evan is someone who's just like me, and his story is very similar to mine. Some aspects of his story are different from mine, but the goal was to write a story that correlates to a lot of men in today's world. Even if men are living on their own, they're all going through something and trying to keep up with what everyone else is doing. It's the struggles we think about mentally on an everyday basis. And to get it right, to be accepted by others, and find ourselves too. And men deal with so much, and they try to find their happiness while also making a living, plus a lot of other things. None of it is easy. I had my bouts of sadness and depression. I also deal with anxiety, overthinking, and trying to figure out my thoughts daily. And Evan is someone that a lot of men can relate to. And I'm so happy I wrote this story in the Man's Plight series. Now, to say that writing these characters were easy, it wasn't. Robert is pretty much a younger version of me. He's in his mid-20s when you read the story, and a lot of what he's facing as far as trying to figure himself out as a man were the things that I dealt with. And a lot of the content in the story is fictional. A lot of that stuff doesn't relate to what I've dealt with, but other experiences of other men that make mistakes and are trying to alleviate those mistakes by doing the right thing and making their lives better. And a lot of black men in America don't have the right mentorship. And I had to give Robert a good mentor to look up to. And his name was Mr. Marble. And he was a man who was a stand-up guy. And he had a family. And he had kids. And he had a nice home in the suburbs. And it was something that Robert aspires to be. But he has to figure himself out. And Robert is someone who lost some important people in his life. And he had to deal with those things. And I addressed the mental health aspect. And he went to therapy to get help for a lot of the things that he's dealing with and has gone through. And that's something in black culture that we're still working through and trying to accept, that we are not okay a lot of times. And I will sit here and say that I have a lot of friends that will not talk about the things that they're dealing with and going through. And then there are those that are okay with saying, I have a therapist. And if you guys don't know by now, I went to therapy in 2020 for 2 months. And it was one of the toughest challenges of my life. So this is why I write a lot of the characters that I do. Whether it's talking about Robert and his struggles of trying to figure himself out, to Evan, who's trying to get himself into a good place from a financial perspective, not only for himself, but to figure himself out, to Dwight, who's trying to change the portrayals of how we are looked at and viewed in the media. There's reasons into all of the things that I do and the reasons why I write the books that I do. And while I've written a lot of books, I'm thankful that I'm able to share a lot of the reasons why I write the characters that I do, why I write the books that I do. And I really, really, really would love if you guys would take the time to really look into a lot of the books and the content that I've written. I do share book links in the descriptions. It's kind of hard to, click those links on, Spotify and Apple and things of that nature, which is why I try to push all of you guys to listen to my podcast on the AquarianMindPodcast.com, because when you're in my show, you can click the links and go to where you need to be. But the point is that you pretty much can go to any book site except Amazon. You can type in my name and you will find all of my books, pretty much in a nutshell. So with that said, those are my characters that relate to me. Remember, a lot of writers and authors write characters that are like them. It's part of our writing journey to write content that readers and listeners can relate to. So I hope you guys enjoyed this podcast. I hope you guys are enjoying my journey. And I hope you guys really take the time to look into the books that I've written. And I do have a few of my books in audio format. With that said, have a good weekend, everybody. Be good, everyone, and go accomplish your goals.